Hello, everybody. I'll get started here in a second. All right. Hey, everybody. How's everybody going? It's Patrick Hostis here. So, there's a lot of news to cover. So, I'm going to go ahead and jump into it. A lot of stuff's going on. A lot of stuff it's starting to look like is becoming more and more inevitable. And what's really bad about it is it's not just in one area. It looks like it's multiple areas we have to look at. So let's just start digging through the news here and I'll show you what I'm talking about. All right. So this happened today. Caught on video, a Russian NATO jets in near standoff after F-16 buzzes defense minister's airplane. So a day after a Russian fighter jet allegedly flew within 5 feet of a U.S. reconnaissance plane traveling over the Baltic Sea, Reuters reports that a NATO F-16 fighter jet returned the favor when it tried to improperly approach a plane carrying the Russian defense minister. The plane was traveling to the city of Kaliningrad, a Russian enclave along the Baltic coast, where Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu was scheduled to discuss security issues with defense officials on Wednesday. The NATO aircraft was warded off by an Su-27 that showed its weapons off to it. Here, I'll show you the video here. Might come through a little. You kind of see what happened there. So that's the NATO F-16. And this is obviously from the defense minister's plane, I guess. And here comes the Russian aircraft. And he's pulling up alongside so the F-16 could see, and see there he's tipping so he could see he has weapons under his wings. And then it looks like he's kind of getting in a firing position, so I think he was giving a little warning, and apparently the F-16 flew off not too long after that. So that's a little bit of what they call a provocation. So they've done that, and it just keeps getting more and more dangerous. Now, granted, this kind of thing happened a lot during the Cold War, so it's not exactly the worst thing in the world, but you know, it's only a matter of time before something pretty bad happens. And down here at the end of this, and this is off of Zero Hedge, by the way, and if you look down here at the bottom, it says the latest provocation maneuver represents yet another escalation of tensions between the U.S. and Russia. On Monday, Russia suspended cooperation with the U.S. and Syria under the Memorandum of Incident Prevention in Syrian skies, warning that its missile defense would intercept any aircraft traveling in Russia's area of operation after a U.S. fighter jet shot down a Syrian regime aircraft on Sunday. Russia slammed the U.S. for shooting down the jet, calling it the attack an act of aggression, and claiming that the move benefited terrorists in the area. The Syrian regime says the jet was pursuing fleeing ISIS convoy, but at the time it was shot down. The U.S. claimed it tried to contact its Russian counterparts via the established deconfliction line, though Russia has denied this, saying that the U.S. reached out. If they reached out, the incident could have been avoided. Then a U.S. jet downed a pro-regime drone on Monday, and what Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy described as a dangerous escalation of tensions between U.S. and pro-Syrian regime powers like Iran and Russia. So, and he says something interesting down here that I kind of took note of. I think we're getting, and this is that Connecticut senator speaking here. He goes, I think we're getting closer and closer to open conflict between Iran and Russia, and the American public need to know that's where we're moving very fast towards what could be another war in the Middle East, something Donald Trump promised he would not office. And that is true. He did promise he wouldn't do that. Next story, also off of Zero Hedge. China responds to Trump's North Korea tweet. So you remember when this was yesterday, Trump sent out this tweet that said, while I greatly appreciate the efforts of President Xi and China to help with North Korea, it has not worked out. At least I know China tried. So now you can take this tweet a couple of different ways. Suggested the Chinese would be insulted by this, and that's kind of how I think the way it would come out. Because it's kind of like giving them sympathy, like, oh, poor Chinese couldn't do it. That's kind of the way they're going to look at it. But Trump may have meant it as like, hey, I'm not totally blaming you for this situation going wrong. Or Donald Trump could be saying, well, you know, I gave you time to deal with this issue. You didn't. So now I'm going to deal with it on my own. And I think that might be kind of the signal that he was trying to give. Anyway, China's response, let's find it down here. China has now responded saying that its efforts on North Korea have been indispensable. As Bloomberg reports, China has played a very important and constructive role in seeking peace on the Korean Peninsula. Foreign Ministry spokesman Gang Shuang told reporters in Beijing. China strictly implements United Nations Security Council resolutions and isn't the crux of the North Korean issue. Yeah, well, they're their only trading partner and they're still trading with them. And I'm actually going to show you right now that they are still working with them. So this is a really good website that I'd advise everybody should look at if you want to know what's going on in North Korea. It's called 38 North. And it shows you like kind of the latest satellite footage North Korea, since obviously there's not a bunch of news crews running around there since the regime won't allow it. So you have a lot of different, you can get a lot of information off of this, at least the type of information that you can get from defectors and you can get from satellite footage. Well, this is talking about the Chinese and North Korean energy cooperation expanding with hiccups. So China's energy cooperation with North Korea continues despite irritations in the bilateral relations, including sanctions. So in other words, you see right there, China's energy cooperation with North Korea, despite irritations, including sanctions, it's continuing. So see the satellite footage that they're basing this off of. You've got new construction down there, I guess, a new village for North Korean workers. And this is apparently a joint China-North Korean project. Construction underway. So, you know, it's not exactly, I guess, the biggest crime in the world, but it is proving that China is still working with them. So for them to say they've done everything they could do is not exactly being honest. All right, next story. And this one is come out from the Washington Free Beacon. Iran threatens to depose Trump as military readies missile strikes on U.S. forces. Now, you might remember a few days ago, Iran fired those ballistic missiles from Khorram Shah in Iran, fired them over Iraq into targets into Syria. And that was mainly, Iran said they did it in retaliation for that ISIS assault on their Tehran, but I think it may have had something to do with it. But I think a big part of it was to give us a warning to watch our step in Syria, since we've been kind of you know, pushing the limits of our rules of engagement out there. I think they're trying to give us some little signals there. This could get really dangerous really fast. And the article goes on, a senior Iranian leader and confidant of Islamic Republic's president is threatening to depose President Donald Trump if he continues his policy of confronting Iran and its terror proxy groups in the Middle East, according to recent comments that come from Iranian military leaders threaten military strike against U.S. bases or U.S. forces and bases in the region. So in other words, hitting our forces in Syria. So Iran has chosen to confront the Trump administration, both militarily and diplomatically, as the U.S. levels new sanctions and punitive measures against Tehran for its continued use of illicit ballistic missiles and for funding terrorism. So this situation's amping up really close, you know, because we have conflicts going on now with the Assad regime that had several times that this is what kills me about it, is we say we have no interest in regime change, but yet we are constantly doing things that will cause possibly regime change, or, you know, we're indicating that's what we're trying to do. So I feel like the military actions we're taking and what the rhetoric coming from the diplomats doesn't exactly match up all the time. And it's kind of a little bit of a disjointed type of foreign policy that I find a little confusing. But anyway, this clearly is Iran's trying to make it very clear that they're going to stand and fight in Syria. So we're going to have to be, and this is really where the question comes down to, is Syria worth to us? Now, I'm not suggesting that, oh, we should never fight under any circumstances. If Iran tries to block any of our ships' movement through the Persian Gulf, we've got to go to war over that. We've got to stop. We cannot allow them to prevent the free trade or free commerce, free trade, our ships moving from one side to the other. We cannot allow that to happen. So that's something that I would say, you know what, we're going to have to cut cards with the devil on this one. We're going to have to fight it out. But are we really willing to do that? Now, I don't know if you saw that today, but ISIS blew up that mosque that Baghdadi, the head of ISIS, had went there a few years ago, and went to that famous mosque and proclaimed the caliphate or whatever. Well, they blew that up today. It's kind of that's the end for them, I guess. That's normal for them, I guess, is to break things, that they can't keep, I guess. But that a lot of people are taking that as a sign that ISIS is almost finished. Baghdadi himself, last I heard, might be dead because the Russians are saying they killed him in an airstrike, and he hasn't shown up, as far as I know, to say, hey, I'm alive. So I think ISIS, at least the actual core ISIS group in the Middle East, is probably on its days are numbered. There's all these wannabes and freaks that have been let into Europe and God knows where else through the refugee scam, and they're still going to be out there, and they're going to be a threat to the West for quite some time. But as far as in Syria itself, it looks like things should be winding down, not winding up. But it looks like things are winding up. And now, pretty soon the space between our forces is getting smaller and smaller. And pretty soon there's not going to be any ISIS or enemies between us, Russia, Assad, and the Iranian proxy forces. So things could get really hot really fast. Oh, this one I already went over. Next story. This is from Yonhap, which is a South Korean news agency. And this is a little weird. So North Korea is open to a moratorium on nuclear missile tests, this report said. So this came out of New Delhi, it looks like. North Korea's top envoy to India on Wednesday offered a conditional moratorium on his country's nuclear and missile tests in an apparent bid to hold talks with the United States. So this is a little unusual. I mean, so you can take this a couple different ways. Maybe with the death of that kid, Otto, or Warmblinger, I believe his. I don't want to say his last name wrong, but that poor kid that they basically beat to death, who came back, they let him go, and he was in a coma, and he just passed away. It's a tragic story. And I think maybe even North Korea realized that that's not going to go over very well. So maybe this is their half-hearted attempt to try to, hey, we're willing to talk. I think they even know they may have overstepped. They may have overplayed their hand right now. And Trump is definitely turning the heat up on him by kind of that little tweet of putting China on notice that, hey, thanks for the effort, whatever it may have been, but it looks like we're going to have to handle this one on our own. However, they did make this offer, apparently. North Korean ambassador to India, Kai Chun-yong, said Pyongyang is willing to talk in terms of freezing its nuclear missile tests under certain circumstances. If our demands is met, okay, I'm saying that's how he's speaking it. I'm not mispronouncing it, so just pointing that out. Quote, if our demands is met, we can negotiate in terms of the moratorium of such weapons testing. In English, in an interview posted on the website of India's television, WION. He suggested that one of the key demands is to halt U.S. joint military drills with South Korea, and Pyongyang denounced as a rehearsal for invasion. Seoul and Washington say their annual exercises are for defensive in nature. So I could tell you that's probably not going to win there. This is probably a no-go right off the start. So I don't know. They can attempt it, I guess. I don't know. There's a possibility that South Korea might be open to discussing this, but I really would be surprised if Trump would offer to meet any demand for North Korea to just hold talks. I just don't see that happening. All right, let me switch back here. Bear with me a moment. I'm still getting used to this live stream thing here. All right. Oh. Should be turning my camera back on. All right, now back to me. So those are the news stories that caught my eye that are looking pretty dangerous here. And how you doing? Thank you. Looking at the live chat here. Yeah, let Syria be hot without. All right. Thanks for the live chat, guys. I really appreciate it. So there's a couple things I want to discuss and see what you think of this. I'm curious if you remember during the Obama administration how he was constantly holding back the military and micromanaging everything down to, you know, nitpicking every little thing our military did down to, you know, very minute level. Is there a possibility? I know Trump wasn't going to be that way, and he said, you know, he was very honest about it on the campaign trail that he was going to give the military, you know, the authority to do what he felt they needed to do. So maybe for the circumstances, something as delicate as Syria, where we have the Russians and the Assad and Iran, maybe those rules of engagement shouldn't be quite so loose, is what I'm saying, because I cannot imagine under any circumstance where Russia and Iran are going to put up with us constantly shooting planes down without any, or drones and planes down without any kind of a response. I just don't see it happening. I don't think the Russians want that. I think they desperately want to avoid it. Assad just wants to try to stay alive and stay in power, so I don't think he's going to do very much about it. But the Iranians could really dominate the situation. And you got to think about that. That's not a good position we're in. On both positions, either in Syria, actually in three positions, in Syria and North Korea, we're completely at the mercy of our adversaries. It really is true. We're at the mercy of whatever they want to come up with. If Iran decides to hit us or hit our forces there, we're at war. They've decided it, you know, and we go to war with Iran and God forbid Russia. And then John McCain or whoever gets World War III like they've always wanted, I guess, you know, and that would be a tragedy for everybody. And the Taliban decides the mission tempo, and I'm sure I've done some reports about this, and you guys probably heard about it. Now we're sending more troops in there in Afghanistan. You know, we've done this, played this game for 16 years, raising levels, dropping levels. It's not helping. So, but anyway, apparently decision's been made that 4,000 are going to go. So more on that. But again, in that area, we're at the mercy of our enemies as well. North Korea, same situation. Probably that's a very delicate situation because you have 26 million people held hostage by this nutcase, meaning Seoul. He could fire off all his, you know, artillery and whatever else, chemical weapons, and God forbid nuclear, right into South Korea, and that could cause millions of casualties, not to mention our own troops that are stationed in that area. So very dangerous situation. So that the rules of engagement might be so loose that it kind of makes a misunderstanding or an accident inevitable. You might remember during the Cuban Missile Crisis, I mean, John F. Kennedy basically had to control and micromanage every single thing the military did just to ensure we didn't end up in a nuclear war with the Soviet Union. And I almost think that kind of attention has to be paid to these situations right now. Now, I'm not suggesting the military should have no right to defend themselves or anything like that. Speaking as a retired sergeant, you can, you know, imagine I wouldn't want that. But in the same respect, I don't want to be shooting down planes that aren't exactly a threat to us either. And God forbid we hit a Russian plane. That could not be good. I mean, they have transponders and everything, but still. My point is, the odds of a serious and just too extreme for the decisions to be left up to people really, you know, lower than the presidential level, I would say. So that's how that goes. Syria, I have to say that part of the world, the only interest I see that we have there is destroying ISIS, and it looks to me that the core group of ISIS is about done. So I think our intervention there should be done soon, I would hope. But I don't think that's the way we're going right now. I think it looks more and more like we're going to be there for a while. I believe a lot of these shoot downs and things like that are kind of more about post-war Syria than it is anything really military related necessarily. I am not saying that 100% certainty, but I do think that we're trying to flex our muscle a little bit to get us get as large of a slice of the pie that we'd like towards the end. It's just a suspicion. I don't have anything on that, but that's kind of what otherwise I can't see why we're putting in so much effort when the things are going pretty smoothly at this time. There's no reason we should be creating this much friction, but there we are. And I went over that. The North Korea situation is very dangerous with this. I have long felt that military action there is inevitable. I think the way that Trump has this way of when he's dealing, I think this is his way of negotiating with companies, is he goes all the way up to the level, he ratchets up the pressure really high right off the gate. With North Korea, he threatened them. He sent, 3 aircraft carriers. He moved all these forces. He made a big sign real quick. And then it seems he kind of tries to ratchet it down and tries to negotiate and play these type of diplomatic games, or, that's his way of dealing. But I'm not so sure that type of situation, that type of behavior is going to work on a nation is absolutely insane as North Korea. I don't know if that's exactly, if you're dealing with somebody who doesn't really have a firm grasp on what the real world's like, I don't know if you want to, go make believe, make it, I don't know. I just don't know if that's the way we want to go with this situation. But there's no doubt that the situation is very tense and very dangerous. And I think, I would not be surprised at all. And I hate to say this, and I've said this to a lot of my followers before. I have family in South Korea. I don't want a war to break out there. I really don't, because, it could kill half my family, in an instant. So that's not something I want out of there. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if I turn on TV one day and find out, Trump has done some sort of airstrikes on there, because it may come to that. And, I just tell everybody, don't be surprised if something like that happens. That'd be an absolute nightmare, I would think, because the cost of that, not just our troops, but of South Korea, they can hit Japan, and it could be just catastrophic. And our General Mattis and everybody's been very honest about that. Nobody's tried to sugarcoat this. Trying to evacuate people out of Seoul would be tantamount to Dunkirk. This would not be a simple thing. So, we've got some serious problems to the top right now. Just as somebody who's watched foreign policy for a number of years, and I see that things are quickly going to kind of boil to a head here. So I wanted to do this video and make sure everybody's minds on this, and let your representatives know where you stand on these issues. If you're for or against them, the people's voice does matter. Do you feel like Syria is something we need to be flexing our muscle in? Do you think that the shoot downs are justified? The shoot down of that one Syrian regime aircraft, and then the drone a day or so afterwards? Do you think these are just things we have to do, typical, or is it things that we should probably not be doing if we don't want to escalate the situation there? Let me know. Comments, live streaming, anyway, just let me know. I'd really like to hear everybody's comments on this. So I think I'm going to do videos. I'll probably do, how I do my usual PH News nightly recap, and I put a bunch of clips on there. I'll probably mix it up. I like doing live streams when there's kind of a message I really want to get out to you guys that's really particular, and I want to say it myself. I'll probably do the live streams. But if other times, I'll be doing just the clips of the highlights of the news of the day. But if you think I should be doing them longer or shorter or anything like that, please let me know in the comments. I can't fix it if I don't know about it. So I want to make this the best channel for you to get your news. So, let me know what I can do to help with that. Take a quick look. Oh, thank you, Jeremy. Saw your comment there. I appreciate it. Thank you. Said he loves my videos. I appreciate it. Kim Lingowan here. What would happen if something should happen to Kim? Now, I've long felt that the best thing that could possibly happen would be something to Kim Jong-il. I think that if Kim Jong-il was, if there was a military coup of some kind, that would be the greatest possible outcome. And, there's, maybe I'll do a video on this sometime, but I do believe that there was an attempted coup a couple of years ago on Un. It was done by a general, what was his name? think his last name was Ri. Sorry, his name's eluding me right now, but he's a North Korean general. So a coup, I think, is the one way we could effectively deal with this situation. And it's not like we have a lot of control over that if a coup happens or not. But Kim Jong Un, I think if we did it with a airstrike or something like that, I think that would have a negative response. I think that a war would break out regardless. But if another high-ranking North Korean military officer did it and it didn't have our fingerprints all over it, that might have a different reaction. So, that would be the bloodless way of doing it. The problem is we really just don't know much about Kim Jong-un. It's not like the guy does a lot of interviews. It's not that he, hey, we know what's going on in his head. So, it's something about the guy, and it's hard for us to know how he'd react. It was the same way with Hitler. A lot of people didn't know back in the 30s a lot about this guy, and they didn't really know how crazy he was. Is this guy really crazy enough to start a world war overnight? Well, he was, and that's what happened. So I think that there's a very good possibility to answer the title of this video, a new American war is inevitable. I really don't want to see that happen. I think that that's the opposite of making America great again. I think in some of these circumstances, though, I mean, with North Korea, I mean, we may not have a choice. We may have to fight it out with that. The guy's a problem. When you've got nuclear weapons and you're firing missiles off and threatening this, and, it's just, you're sending, beating people, putting them in comas, and, they're killing them, murdering, basically beating a kid to death because he stole a poster that is from another country. I mean, that's insane. I mean, these people that regime, and the crimes that they've committed to their own people are just disgusting. The largest concentration camp on earth is located in North Korea, and it's called Yodok. One of the smallest countries on earth, but it has the largest concentration camp. But that is the North Korean regime. So let me know what you think, everybody. I'm going to end the video here, but thank you all. Thank you all for your comments, and I'll make a video out here pretty soon and do some more live streams, and we'll keep it going, and just have to see how things unfold in the next couple days. All right, take it easy. This has been Patrick Hostis.